Let's see what kinds of shapes Probuilder can make if we click for the panel instead of New Shape. So if the new panel comes up, you get a Probuilder shape, but it's in this light blue, not in the default white. And that's because it is in preview mode. The, the shapes, before you commit them with build, the shapes are in parametric mode, which means that if I wanted to create this, but I needed it to be too high in the Y, and I needed it to go back 5 in the Z, I could specify that that's what I want to have built. And then when I click build, that object is created, and we see that in the white version, and then a new preview with the same parameters is set there. I can come to these three dots and reset my parameters, and we can kind of see through the outline that it's back to a 1, 1, 1, although I think because my cursor was in the Z, it didn't actually update the interface. So like I had indicated several videos earlier, this tool is still not 100%. And I'm curious now, if I build this, it actually built that as 111, not as 115 as indicated here. So just be careful, be aware of things like that. I'm going to back up. I'm still in preview mode. So the cube is one object, but you can also build a sprite. And in this case, I just flipped the axis for the sprite. I tend to find Unity sprites fine, so this may not be as useful as some of the other options. Prisms. So a prism is basically a triangular shape. And oh, this is very important. If I click away from the panel disappears, but my object still is not committed. It's still in preview mode, which means that to commit it, I can still click the plus sign and bring this object back up, bring this panel back up, so I can continue to modify the parameters. So the prism by default wants to be 1 by 1 by 1, and then you can make those changes. The stair, which I think is one of the coolest objects. I'm going to reset the stair to its normal components and zoom out on it just a little bit. So you start to see the power of Probuilder when you take a look at a parametric object like this. Okay, well that's not bad, but I want the steps to be broader. You know, that not quite a normal staircase, but something a little bit grander. So maybe I need them to have greater depth. I mean, and maybe much greater depth. I can turn that in and go 20 world units. Or maybe we decide, okay, 20 world units isn't where we want it. We'll keep it right at about 5. But maybe we need more steps. So we can just drag those in. Or maybe we decide that it should be an open stairway, so it shouldn't have the sides on it, and it's just this path going up. Or maybe we need the stair to bend, so it needs to curve around at 90 degrees. And if we look at it from the top, we see that it can complete that 90-degree arc quite nicely. Or maybe we want to go a full spiral, and we have that option as well. You know, let's go 270. Okay. We might need the stairs to be wider. We might need the stair height to be taller. And if I go back and view these from a different angle, we can see a little bit better what's happening. And bring the parametric stairs back in. Oh, and also we can flip them so that they curve in the opposite direction. So stairs are, pretty nifty as tools go. Cylinders, you will not believe how often you will need to make use of these objects. Cylinders are remarkably versatile, and if we look at them from the top, we can see that they are round with, pie wedges for the triangles, kind of a circular fan, and then we have sets of triangular wedges going up and down. And if we go ahead and we can specify, it shouldn't be 18 sides, it should only be 6 sides, it becomes a little bit more visible. And instead of there being 4 height segments, there should be 1 height segment. And the height of the object, we'll leave it at 3. And then we can visually smooth that down. So even though it's very sharp angular edges, if we specify that the edges should belong to a smoothing group, visually we can use fewer triangles and still get something that looks a little more rounded. So cylinder objects, door objects, and let me just reset the door to its default. So in this case, if you're building out walls, you can specify geometry that you can pass through, because this would fit into other sets of cubes, so we don't need these sides filled out. It's meant to go in with another set of faces that come around here. Plane. And let me change. Where are you, plane? Because planes are two-dimensional objects, if I'm on the wrong side of them, we can't see them. And we will go back in and we will, it's also infinitely small. So I will reset it. And it has decided to play hide and seek. There it is. And now we just need to change its orientation. There we go. So here we have a plane with 3 width segments and 3 length segments, and it's also 10 wide and 10 long in terms of world units. And where this becomes useful is if we do build this, for instance. And if I close the build tool, the temporary placeholder preview goes away. Now if I'm in vertex mode, I can click on an individual vertex, and maybe I can go into move mode, and I can start to deform this plane, and we can get like some low poly terrain starting to be established. If we wanted to set up something, and we could add more vertices if we needed to, in order to be able to smooth this, but we're going to learn a much better way. Now, if we're trying to do realistic outdoor terrain, I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. If we were going to be trying to set up specific gameplay areas inside of a realistic outdoor terrain, we would probably build something like this and kind of embed it in this other form of terrain that we'll learn in a couple of weeks. So planes can be useful as well. Let me delete this from the scene so we can get the other pieces here. The pipe object, which is a hollow cylinder with parameters so we can increase the radius of the pipe, increase the height of the pipe, increase the thickness, increase the number of sides to smooth it down or decrease, and also get more or fewer height segments to allow us to manipulate the geometry of the object. The cone object can be very useful as a directional indicator, or and its base parameter set is radius of 1, height of 2 with 6 sides. And then, of course, adjustable, as with all the other parameterized objects. The arch, which is a useful shortcutty tool for adding points of interest or finish lines in Mario Kart-esque style games, or any other place where you might find the need for an arch. Sphere. And so our sphere can be either this very segmented icososphere. We can go ahead and add subdivisions. Let me add the radius, make it a little bit bigger, change its subdivisions, and as you can see, the smoother it gets, the more triangles we get. So this would be like no good reason to have this many triangles. But you might need to go up from 1 subdivision to 2 so that you can then apply a smoothing group to this to kind of make it look more round. And then finally, the torus, because donuts. So if we bring this in and then look at it, we have parameters to control information about how much geometry goes into making up the torus. So subdivisions, both in terms of rows and columns. We can set the radius of the torus. We can specify if we want to be able to specify both the outside radius and the inside radius. So if we wanted to do inner tube sorts of things, we can. We can also specify how much of the torus needs to be on display. So we can create, small archways or tubing. We can also decide that we don't need the entire width. So now we can get smooth arced shells that we can put together and reassemble in different ways. And also it can be smoothed, or it might not need to be smoothed. So if without the smoothing group, we can see the facets much more easily. If we add a smoothing group, then the calculations of the way the color is going to be represented on the surface will be less faceted. There are a lot of different tools available to us, and we can think of many different ways to combine them just to get our block out of a level set up. And so we'll use this as we start thinking about how Probuilder can allow us to create spaces for our player to explore and exist in.